The air turns cold, heavy with the scent of ozone and ancient earth. He stands in the center of the clearing, his body trembling as he fights to hold back a power that hasn't seen the light in 5 years. At his feet, a woman refuses to back down, her eyes glowing with a defiant amber light, even as the shadows around them begin to physically constrict. "They're coming," she whispers, her voice steady despite the chaos. She was cast out by her people for a truth she wasn't supposed to find. He abandoned a throne of glass and steel to hide the monster clawing beneath his skin. Now the hunters have arrived, not with steel, but with a darkness meant to erase them both from history. If he keeps hiding his true nature, she won't survive the night. But if he lets the silver fire in his veins take over, he will shatter a century-old lie and reclaim a legacy that connects the underworld to the lunar pact. The hunt has begun. Watch until the end to discover why a human heir holds the key to the werewolf throne, and how one forbidden alliance will rewrite the laws of the moon.
Mira's wrists burned against the silver chains. She stood in the center of the stone circle, surrounded by torch flames that cast dancing shadows across the ancient clearing. The Pack Council formed a half-moon around her, their faces carved from judgment and tradition. Elder Gareth raised his staff. The carved wood caught the firelight. His silver beard moved as he spoke. "Mira Thorne, you crossed into the Forbidden Lands." Mira lifted her chin. Her jaw tightened, but her voice came out steady. "I was gathering moon petal for the sick children." Gareth's eyes narrowed. He slammed the staff against stone. The sound echoed through the clearing. "The treaty forbids any wolf from entering those territories. You have broken our most sacred law." The other council members shifted. Their robes rustled like dead leaves. Mira's fingers curled into fists behind her back. The chains clinked softly. She could feel every link pressing against her skin. "The treaty is rotting from the inside," Mira said. "Someone is using those lands for something else. I saw evidence." Gareth's face darkened. He stepped forward. His shadow fell across her. "You speak lies to save yourself." Mira shook her head. Her dark hair fell across her shoulders. She met his gaze without flinching. "I speak truth you refuse to hear." A younger council member whispered to another. His hand moved to cover his mouth. Gareth silenced them with a glance. He turned back to Mira, his expression cold as winter stone. "The council has decided you will be exiled permanently. At dawn you will be escorted beyond our borders and forbidden from ever returning." Mira's breath caught. She recovered quickly, her expression hardening into something unreadable. "Exile is mercy I didn't expect from you." Gareth's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He stepped even closer. "The original sentence was execution, but someone intervened on your behalf, someone with enough influence to change our minds." Mira's eyes widened slightly. She scanned the faces around her, searching for answers in the flickering torchlight. No one met her gaze. They all looked away or down at the ground. "Who?" Gareth turned away. He gestured to the guards with a wave of his staff. "That information is not yours to know. Take her to the holding chamber. She leaves at first light." 2 guards approached. Their footsteps crunched against gravel. They unlocked her chains and gripped her arms. Their hands were firm but not cruel. Mira didn't resist, but she kept her head high as they led her away from the circle. The forest swallowed the torchlight behind them. Darkness pressed close on all sides. Mira walked between the guards, her mind racing through possibilities and questions that had no answers. Morning mist clung to the forest floor. Mira walked between 4 guards, her hands now bound with rope instead of silver. Her worn leather pack hung from one guard's shoulder, containing everything she owned. The trees thinned ahead. Beyond them lay the borderlands, neutral territory that belonged to neither pack nor syndicate. The lead guard stopped. He cut the ropes from her wrists with a single slice of his blade. "This is as far as we go." Mira rubbed her wrists. The skin showed red marks, but no real damage. She reached for her pack. The guard handed it over without a word. "What happens if I try to return?" The guard's expression remained blank. "Don't." Mira slung the pack over her shoulder. She looked back at the forest that had been her home for 23 years. The morning light filtered through the canopy in broken streams. "Tell whoever intervened that I don't need their mercy." The guards turned and disappeared into the trees. Mira stood alone at the border. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, memorizing the scent of pine and earth and morning dew. Then she turned and walked into the mist. The borderlands stretched empty and quiet. No birds sang here. No deer grazed. Only the wind moved through the grass, carrying whispers of old conflicts and forgotten promises. Mira followed a narrow path that wound between scattered rocks and twisted trees. Her boots made soft sounds against the dirt. She kept her senses alert, watching for movement. A branch snapped behind her. Mira spun around. Her hand dropped to the small knife at her belt. 3 figures emerged from the mist, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. "Mira Thorne," the lead guard said. The voice belonged to a woman, cold and measured. Mira's fingers tightened on her knife handle. "Who's asking?" The woman stepped closer. Her hood fell back, revealing sharp features and calculating eyes. "Someone who knows what you found in the Forbidden Lands. Someone who can't allow you to share that information." Mira backed up slowly. Her mind raced through possible escape routes. "The council already dismissed my claims." The woman smiled. It held no warmth. "The council serves our purposes, but you, Mira Thorne, you're a thread that needs cutting." The 3 figures moved forward as one. Mira ran through the borderlands. Her feet pounded against the earth as she dodged between trees. The hooded figures pursued her, their movements unnaturally fast and coordinated. Mira's breath came hard and sharp. Her pack bounced against her back with every stride. She burst into a clearing and stumbled to a stop. More hooded figures surrounded the space, forming a complete circle, 12 in total. Their faces remained hidden beneath dark fabric. Mira turned slowly, counting exits that didn't exist. Her hand gripped her knife handle. The woman who had spoken earlier stepped into the clearing. Her boots made no sound against the grass. "There's nowhere to go, Omega." Mira dropped her pack. She pulled her knife free, the small blade catching sunlight that filtered through the trees. "Then I'll make this difficult for you." The woman raised her hand. Shadows gathered around her fingers, thick and unnatural. They moved like smoke, but felt solid. The darkness stretched toward Mira like living things with purpose and hunger. Mira slashed at them with her knife. The blade passed through the darkness without resistance. The shadows wrapped around her ankles, cold and solid despite their appearance. They felt like ice against her skin. She fell to her knees. The knife dropped from her hand and clattered against stone. More shadows climbed up her legs, her torso, reaching for her throat. Mira fought to breathe. She gasped and struggled. Her vision started to narrow into a tunnel of fading light. A sound split the air. It started low, a rumble that came from everywhere and nowhere. The ground trembled beneath her. The shadows wavered and loosened their grip. The hooded figures looked around, their formation breaking apart. A man walked into the clearing. He wore simple, dark clothing, no armor or weapons visible. His black hair fell to his shoulders in straight lines. His eyes glowed silver in the morning light, bright and impossible. The woman with the shadows took a step back. Her confident expression cracked. "This doesn't concern you, Corsaro." The man continued forward. His movements were controlled, each step deliberate and measured. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. The air seemed to bend around him. Release her. The woman's hands clenched into fists. More shadows gathered around her, pooling at her feet. You abandoned your claim to authority. You have no power here. The man stopped 10 feet from Mira. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable as carved stone. Then he raised his head and met the woman's gaze with eyes that burned silver. I said, release her. His voice carried weight that pressed against the air itself.
The shadows around Mira shattered like glass. They dissipated into nothing, leaving only cold air behind. She gasped and pulled oxygen into her lungs. Her throat burned. She coughed and pressed her hand against the ground. The hooded figures drew weapons. Blades appeared in their hands, edges gleaming in the dappled sunlight. They formed a tighter circle around the clearing. Their movements synchronized perfectly. The man spread his arms wide. Silver light erupted from his skin, bright enough to make the hooded figures shield their eyes with their free hands. The light didn't burn or hurt. It simply existed, absolute and undeniable. Mira stared up at him from the ground. Her breath came easier now. She recognized what she was seeing, but couldn't believe the evidence before her eyes. An alpha's power. True alpha power coursing through human veins. But this man was human, or he should be. The laws of nature said so. The woman in charge lowered her hood completely, her face twisted with anger, her jaw clenched tight. You think showing your nature will save her? You're one man against 12 trained operatives. The man lowered his arms slowly. The silver light faded but didn't disappear completely. It clung to him like a second skin, shimmering beneath the surface. I'm Dante Corsaro, first son of the Corsaro family, heir to the Syndicate and the moon-bound legacy. I claim this Omega under my protection. The words rang out like a declaration of war. They echoed across the clearing and into the trees beyond. The woman laughed. The sound came out sharp and bitter. Your family abandoned the old ways decades ago. Your claim means nothing to us or anyone else. Dante's eyes flashed brighter. The silver intensified until it was almost painful to look at directly. My blood says otherwise. Challenge me if you doubt it. Silence filled the clearing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The hooded figures looked to their leader, waiting for orders. She stared at Dante, calculating odds and consequences in her mind. Her expression shifted. Fear flickered across her features before she masked it. Finally, she raised her hand. The figures lowered their weapons. Metal slid back into sheaths. The Veil Syndicate will remember this choice, Corsaro. You've made powerful enemies today. She turned and walked into the trees. Her movements were stiff with contained anger. The others followed her like shadows. Within moments, the clearing stood empty except for Mira and Dante. Mira pushed herself to her feet. Her legs shook but held her weight. She retrieved her knife and pack, keeping her eyes on Dante the entire time. What are you? Dante turned to face her. The silver light dimmed further, becoming almost invisible beneath his skin. Someone who just made himself a target to save your life. Mira's grip tightened on her knife handle. I didn't ask for your protection. Dante's expression softened slightly. Something like amusement touched the corners of his eyes. No, you looked ready to fight 12 trained operatives with a blade meant for cutting herbs. Dante led the way through dense forest. Mira followed 10 paces behind, her hand never far from her knife. They didn't speak. The only sounds were their footsteps and the occasional bird call. After an hour, Dante stopped at what looked like a solid rock face. He pressed his hand against a specific stone. Something clicked. A section of rock swung inward, revealing a hidden entrance. Inside. Mira hesitated. She peered into the darkness beyond the entrance. How do I know this isn't a trap? Dante stepped through the entrance first. His voice echoed back. If I wanted you trapped, I would have let the Veil Syndicate finish their work. Mira couldn't argue with that logic. She followed him inside. The passage led to a small cave system. Dante lit torches that hung in brackets along the walls. Warm light revealed a surprisingly comfortable space. Bedrolls, supplies, books stacked on natural stone shelves. "You've been living here," Mira said. Dante set down the pack he'd been carrying. "For 3 years. It's safe, hidden. The Veil Syndicate doesn't know about it." Mira explored the cave cautiously. She noticed weapons stored in one corner, a map spread across a makeshift table, papers covered in notes and diagrams. "You've been tracking them." Dante moved to the table. He studied the map without touching it. "They're the reason I left my family, the reason I've been hiding. They're corrupting both worlds from the inside." Mira joined him at the table. She scanned the notes, her eyes widening. "These are council member names, syndicate leaders. You think they're all compromised?" Dante nodded. "The Veil Syndicate has been infiltrating for decades, slowly, carefully. They want the moon mineral deposits in the sacred territories. With that power, they could control everything." Mira's finger traced a line on the map. It marked the forbidden lands. "That's what I saw. Mining equipment, hidden beneath false ground. I thought it was smugglers." Dante looked at her sharply. "You found their operation?" Mira met his gaze. "I found one site. There could be more." Dante's jaw tightened. He turned back to the map. "That's why they sentenced you to exile. You were supposed to die out there quietly, no questions asked." Mira's hand curled into a fist on the table. "The council betrayed their own people." "Not all of them," Dante said. "Someone intervened for you, someone who might still be loyal." Mira sat on one of the bedrolls. She pulled dried meat from her pack and ate slowly, her mind processing everything. Dante remained at the table, making notes on his papers. The torchlight cast his shadow long across the cave wall. "Why did you help me?" Mira asked. Dante's hand paused. He set down his writing tool. "I've been watching the council for months, waiting for proof of Veil Syndicate involvement. When they sentenced you for entering the Forbidden Lands, I knew they were protecting something." "That's strategy, not a reason." Dante turned to face her. His eyes still held traces of silver. "No Omega should face execution for seeking the truth." Mira studied him. She saw the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders, the careful control in every movement. "You're an alpha, a real alpha, not moonbound. How is that possible for a human bloodline?" Dante walked to the cave entrance. He stared out into the passage beyond. "My family made a pact generations ago. The Corsaros would protect the wolf packs. In exchange, we gained strength through a ritual. Moon-bound warriors, blessed but not transformed." He paused. His hand pressed against the stone wall. "My grandfather stopped performing the ritual. He said it corrupted the soul. But I was born with the alpha nature anyway. No ritual, no ceremony, just blood and fate." Mira stood. She moved closer but maintained distance between them. "That should be impossible." "I know. The pacts would see you as either a miracle or an abomination." Dante looked back at her over his shoulder. "Which do you see?" Mira considered the question. She thought about the silver light, the power that had shattered the Veil Syndicate's shadows, the deliberate choice to reveal himself and claim protection over a stranger. "I see someone who could unite both worlds, or tear them apart." Dante turned fully. A sad smile touched his lips. "That's what I'm afraid of." They stood in silence. The torches flickered. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped against stone. Mira broke the quiet first. "What happens now?" Dante returned to his table. He gathered several papers. "Now we prove the Veil Syndicate's conspiracy. We expose the infiltration.
and we stop them before the lunar gathering in 3 days. 3 days? That's when they'll make their move. The gathering brings together all pack leaders and syndicate heads. If they control enough voices, they can rewrite the treaty, give themselves legal access to the sacred lands. Mira's eyes widened. They'll strip mine everything. The moon minerals, the ancient grounds, all of it. Dante nodded grimly. And neither wolves nor syndicates will realize until it's too late.
Morning light filtered through cracks in the cave entrance. Mira woke to find Dante already awake, sharpening a blade with steady, practiced movements. She sat up. Her body ached from sleeping on stone, but she'd endured worse. "We need to get back to the Forbidden Lands," Dante said without looking up. "Document the mining operation. Gather physical proof." Mira reached for her boots. "The Veil Syndicate will be watching those sites now. They know I found one." "Which is why we go to a different location." Dante set down his blade. He unrolled a detailed map. "I've identified 3 potential sites based on mineral deposit patterns. We hit the one furthest from your discovery." Mira joined him. She studied the map, her herbalist knowledge helping her read the terrain markings. "This area floods during heavy rain. Bad place for mining. Unless they have drainage systems we don't know about." Mira traced the elevation lines. "There's a cliff approach here, difficult but possible for someone who knows climbing." Dante looked at her with new respect. "Can you make that climb?" Mira's lips curved into a slight smile. "I gathered moon petal from cliff faces since I was 12. Yes, I can make it." They packed supplies. Dante concealed weapons beneath his coat. Mira filled her pack with rope, tools, and her herb pouches. They worked in efficient silence, 2 people united by necessity. Before leaving, Dante paused at the cave entrance. He placed his hand against the stone in a specific pattern. The hidden door sealed shut behind them, leaving no trace of the entrance. They moved through the forest like shadows. Dante led, his steps silent despite his size. Mira matched his pace, her omega senses alert for danger. 3 hours of careful travel brought them to the edge of the Forbidden Lands. A line of white stones marked the boundary, ancient and weathered. Dante crouched behind a fallen log. Mira knelt beside him. "Guards," she whispered. 2, standard patrol pattern. They change positions every 20 minutes. Mira watched the distant figures moving between trees. "We wait for the gap in their rotation." Dante nodded. They settled in to observe. The sun climbed higher, heat built in the air. Mira's throat grew dry, but she didn't move. Dante remained perfectly still beside her, his breathing controlled and quiet. Finally, the guards shifted position. A gap opened in their pattern. "Now," Dante breathed. They moved as one, crossing the boundary in seconds and disappearing into the dense undergrowth beyond. The cliff rose before them, gray stones streaked with mineral deposits that caught the afternoon light. Mira studied the surface, planning her route. "I'll go up, you keep watch." Dante frowned but didn't argue. He positioned himself where he could see approaches from multiple directions. Mira approached the cliff face. She tested the first handhold, then began to climb. Her fingers found cracks and ledges with practiced ease. Her boots gripped against small protrusions. 20 feet up, 40, 60. The top came into view. Mira pulled herself over the edge and onto a flat area hidden from below. She froze. A massive operation spread before her. Excavation equipment stood silent in the fading light. Piles of raw moon mineral glowed with soft luminescence. Wooden structures housed what looked like processing facilities. And everywhere, symbols. The same mark repeated on crates, equipment, support beams. A veil crossed by 2 daggers. Mira pulled a small journal from her pack. She sketched quickly, capturing layout, symbols, quantities. Her hand moved fast across the paper. A sound made her pause. Footsteps. Multiple people approaching. Mira pressed herself flat against the stone. She watched through a gap in the rocks as 3 figures in dark clothing walked into the mining site. They carried themselves with authority. One pulled back their hood. Mira recognized the face from council meetings, Elder Gareth's second in command. Her breath caught. The betrayal ran deeper than they'd thought. The 3 began inspecting crates, checking inventory. Mira continued sketching, documenting everything. She needed to get this information to Dante. A stone shifted under her hand. The sound was soft, barely audible, but in the quiet of the mining site, it rang out like a bell. All 3 figures turned toward the cliff edge. Mira didn't hesitate. She rolled back from the edge and began descending as fast as she dared. Controlled falls between handholds, dangerous speed. Shouts erupted above. Footsteps ran toward the cliff. Mira dropped the last 15 feet, landing hard but rolling to absorb the impact. Dante was already moving toward her. "We need to run." They crashed through the forest. Behind them, more shouts, pursuit organizing quickly. Dante grabbed Mira's arm and pulled her behind a massive oak. He pressed his finger to his lips. They controlled their breathing, listening. The pursuers ran past their position, continuing deeper into the forest. Dante waited 30 heartbeats. Then he led Mira on a different path, circling back towards safe territory.
They made it back to the cave as night fell. Mira collapsed against the wall, her body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Dante secured the entrance, then lit torches. Mira pulled out her journal. She spread the sketches on the table. "It's worse than we thought. Council members are directly involved. This isn't just infiltration, it's collaboration." Dante studied her drawings. His face grew dark. "Marcus, Gareth's second. If he's compromised, we can't trust the council at all." Mira stood. She paced the small cave. "The lunar gathering is in 2 days. We have proof, but who do we show it to? Who can we trust?" Dante sat heavily on a bedroll. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "My family. The Corsaros have stayed out of pact politics since I left, but they're not corrupt. They're just traditional, stubborn. Will they listen to you?" Dante's laugh held no humor. "I walked away from my inheritance, abandoned my duties. They might throw me out before I finish speaking." Mira stopped pacing. She looked at him directly. "Or they might see this as a chance for their son to return, to be what he was meant to be." Dante met her gaze. Something passed between them, understanding, recognition of shared purpose. "I can't do this alone," he said quietly. "You're not alone." The words hung in the air. Mira moved to sit across from him. She wrapped her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "I've been alone my whole life. No family, no real place in the pack. When they exiled me, I thought I'd lost everything. But maybe I lost nothing because I never really had anything to lose." Dante shook his head. "You had yourself, your principles, your courage. Those things don't come from family or pack. They come from who you choose to be." Mira felt something warm bloom in her chest. She looked down at her hands. "What will you choose when we face the gathering?" Dante stood. He walked to his weapons and began checking them methodically. "I'll choose truth. I'll stand before both worlds and show them what I am. Let them decide if that makes me worthy to bridge the gap between them." Mira stood as well. She touched his arm gently. "For what it's worth, I think you're worthy." Dante's hand covered hers. His skin was warm. The silver light flickered faintly in his eyes. "Then I'll try not to disappoint you." The lunar gathering took place in the ancient amphitheater, carved from white stone generations ago. Torches ringed the circular space, their flames dancing in the night breeze. Pack leaders sat on one side, their formal robes marking their status. Syndicate heads occupied the other side, dressed in fine dark clothing. The center remained neutral ground, empty and waiting.
Mira wore a borrowed cloak, her hood pulled up to hide her face. Dante had positioned her in the upper seats where she could observe everything and remain hidden from searching eyes. He stood at the bottom, in the neutral space, waiting with perfect stillness. Elder Gareth called the gathering to order. His staff struck stone 3 times. His voice carried across the amphitheater. "We meet under the full moon to discuss the treaty between our peoples." The crowd settled into silence. Hundreds of eyes focused forward. The moon hung heavy and bright above them. Gareth continued speaking, his words measured and formal. "Changes have been proposed, new territorial agreements that would benefit both sides, prosperity for all." Dante stepped forward. His single movement drew every gaze in the amphitheater. "I challenge the proposed changes." Shocked silence fell, then murmurs erupted like disturbed bees. People turned to their neighbors. Gareth's face darkened with anger. "Dante Corsaro, you abandoned your position 5 years ago. You have no voice in this gathering." Dante pulled back his coat. Silver light blazed from his skin, bright enough to illuminate the entire amphitheater. Torches seemed dim by comparison. People gasped and stood from their seats. "I am moonbound by blood, alpha by nature. I have more right to speak here than anyone sitting in judgment." Pack leaders leaned forward in their seats. Syndicate heads whispered urgently to each other. Gareth's hand gripped his staff until his knuckles went white. "Impossible!" someone shouted from the pack side. "Humans cannot be true alphas. It violates natural law." Dante's power intensified. The light became almost blinding in its brilliance. Some people shielded their eyes. "My blood says otherwise, and my blood carries the truth you all need to hear tonight." He gestured toward the upper seats. Mira stood, pulling back her hood. Her face was revealed to the entire gathering. She descended the stone steps to the neutral ground, carrying her journal clutched against her chest. Together they presented the evidence. The sketches spread across a table brought to the center, the locations marked and labeled, the names of conspirators read aloud clearly. The amphitheater erupted in chaos. Accusations flew between sides. Pack leaders turned on council members, demanding explanations. Syndicate heads shouted for answers and proof. Gareth stood. His face had gone pale as death. His hands trembled. "These are lies, fabrications from an exile and a deserter trying to cause discord." Dante's father rose from the syndicate seats. The elder Corsaro's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "My son may be many things, but he is no liar. I know his character." The statement silenced the crowd. Dante met his father's eyes across the space. Something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement, recognition. Marcus, Gareth's second in command, tried to slip away through a side exit. Dante moved faster than seemed possible. He blocked the archway, his alpha nature radiating command that froze Marcus in place. "Stay. Face what you've done to both our peoples." Pack enforcers surrounded Marcus from one side. The syndicate's security approached from the other. Trapped from both sides with no escape route, Marcus finally spoke. His voice shook. "The Veil Syndicate offered power, resources beyond imagining. They promised prosperity for both our peoples if we cooperated." "They promised lies," Mira said. Her voice rang clear and strong across the stone. "They would have stripped our sacred lands bare and left us with nothing but poison and emptiness." The truth settled over the gathering like falling snow, heavy, undeniable, cold. Gareth sank into his seat. His staff clattered to the stone floor. Dante addressed the crowd. His voice carried to every corner of the amphitheater. I propose a new alliance, one built on truth instead of corruption. I offer myself as bridge between our worlds, not as ruler, as servant to both. He looked at Mira. She nodded and stepped forward beside him. And I offer my knowledge, my skills, to rebuild what was nearly lost through greed and betrayal. The pack leaders and syndicate heads looked at each other, old enemies, ancient allies. The lines had blurred over generations. Finally, Dante's father stood again. He placed his hand over his heart in the traditional gesture of oath. The Corsaro family accepts this proposal. We will support my son's claim and his mission. One by one, others rose. Not all, but enough. Hands placed over hearts, voices speaking acceptance. The lunar gathering continued long into the night. Agreements were made with careful words. Conspirators were removed from positions of power. The Veil Syndicate's operation was dismantled piece by piece. When the moon reached its peak, Dante and Mira stood together in the neutral ground. The amphitheater had emptied around them. Only starlight and torch flames remained as witnesses. "What happens now?" Mira asked softly. Dante looked up at the moon. The silver light in his eyes reflected its glow perfectly. "Now we build something new together, something that honors both our worlds." Mira smiled. For the first time in her life, the word together didn't sound like a fantasy or empty promise. It sounded like home.
Dante has revealed his true nature, but the Veil Syndicate won't stop until both he and Mira are silenced. The lunar gathering is only the beginning. If you want to see what happens when two worlds collide, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter reveals secrets that will change everything. I'll see you in the next one.